Our young and brutal trip straps off with some kids having fun and playing around. These two boys are then somewhat taking their pics. Well, the narrator says that the country is waging war and school is no more. So in order to stay busy, these boys are probably picking out other children to help them move scrap around a cell. Enter the main guy for the flick, Agu. He's a youngin' trying to make a quick buck by selling this crummy telly. But there's a catch. The catch being that you can watch your own live telenovela from this TV. The guard seems uninterested in what Agu's selling, so he changes the channel. It goes from acting to dancing to kung fu. Despite their entertaining efforts, the guard is an old geezer just waiting his turn in an urn, so he tells him to get lost. He doesn't get the entertainment value of imagination, so they dodge out of there. Agu then narrates that this is a safe zone from the war. People are coming here to save themselves from certain doom. Agu and friends go to this tollgate guard to try and sell their unique imagination TV. They're pulling out all the stops here for the sale, so they bust out the 3D feature of this ingenious device. The guards seem to be entertained, so let the bidding commence.
Bring out some of your food and take it.
Agu settles the price for some food. And the day is won. Back at his home, Agu helps his mother prepare their meals, then teaches her some textbook English. Agu introduces his father, who was a school teacher. A flashback occurs, and it seems that Agu was the kind of airhead in class, so he wouldn't be able to answer his teaching father's questions. It's okay though, because their relationship is better now that he's not a teacher anymore, and instead he's making a living by helping refugees with their living quarters and supplies. Next on the list is his big brother. His older brother is kind of vain, so Agu pisses on him, literally, and that his older brother's only goal is to lay mad pipe with a girl. Denji much? The older brother tortures Agu with his loud music and weird dancing. Afterwards, the family attends mass, and it seems to be a more soulful and happy mass than usual. Soon, Agu finds himself with some friends, and they're making a roadblock scam so that they can make some money. Crafty. Suddenly, this old delusional hag reprimands them and brands them as thieves for apparently stealing their land, whatever that was. Agu eventually gets home and introduces his schizo-like grandfather. Then the family has dinner and a burping contest. This all goes 180 because the imagination TV was apparently taken from Agu's father's TV. He gives chase, and now he has to sleep outside. Suddenly, a power surge begins. The next day, his older brother warns him about ticking off their father too much. Then they male gaze on the local chicks. Another day passes, and Agu's cleaning the front yard, while the radio says that the war near their land is getting crazy. Well, instead of listening, Agu messes with his grandfather's nose. Then here comes the local militia rolling through town. The entire town holds a meeting in the local church. And their village leader says the local military is going to use their land for war, so now they want to leave. The village leaders won't take this, so they're going to send off the women and children to safety while the men are going to stay and protect their ground. A massive argument breaks over the events. And later at night, Agu overhears his parents arguing in another room about if they should all stick together or not. His brother then cheers him up. And the very next day, the mass evacuation begins. People are clamoring to get some transportation, and this goes the same for Agu's family. His father tries to bargain for him to come with his mother, but the driver doesn't want it. They're left with no choice other than to let the mother and the baby ride first. All that's left is Agu, his brother, and father, but Agu can't take this, so he tries to run after their car. Of course, he can't catch it. So they all go back to their powerless home. Soon enough, we find Agu and the boys running from what sounds to be explosions and gunfire. War is starting, and people are panicking everywhere. Luckily for Agu and the boys, they're all safely hidden. That's until the opposing army brings in a Ratel and shoots near their location. Some of the men hiding with them panic, so they try to make a run for it. Too bad those bullets are a little faster, and then foot soldiers find the rest of them. They're all taken outside and they're restrained and held at gunpoint. They're asked if they're opposing rebels, but Agu's father says they're locals.
Bring the woman. You're calling those looters.
This all changes when that crazy old hag comes in and says she doesn't know any of them, and accuses them of being rebels. The NRC leader accuses them of espionage, so it's punishment time. Agu and his brother manage to run away while sadly the rest of them, including their father, are shot like dogs. Agu runs and his brother is sadly shot as well. He retreats to the forest, and looking behind him is a ravaged village. When he's finally safe, he weeps for his brother and his father. Soon he stumbles upon a hut where he tries to salvage the supplies in it. In the end, he's forced to eat some raw plants. Then he eventually retches it out. Suddenly, Agu spots a humanoid figure in the distance, but the figure flees quickly. On the next day at trekking, Agu finds himself in the middle of a gunfight. He's then pounced upon by this dude with a machete. Then they restrain and strip him. They think he's a part of the PLF. And here comes the Commandant. He wants to know why he's in the middle of the forest. Then he's asking Stricka, one of his loyal soldiers, to untie him. The Commandant then calls upon 2 IC to ask him what they should do with Agu.
A boy is very, very dangerous. You understand me?
At first, they thought of eating him, but then the Commandant's asking what his alibi is. So he tells him the gruesome act that the government's army did. Luckily, the Commandant's thinking he can fix him up for war, and Agu agrees that he wants to end those that ended his brother and father. So now he's gonna be under his command. The Commandant then asks him to carry some supplies, and he orders the rest of the NDF to move out. They head out through the jungle, and eventually, after a long trek, they reach the Native Defense Force's secret hideout on top of a plateau. There's a lot of people greeting this Commandant with respect, and they welcome him back with cheerful singing. Agu and the other fresh meat are initiated. Then he's brought to the Co-Hope to be trained. Agu's still shaken up, so he needs to be grabbed for training. A peaceful morning comes over the hideout, and the soldiers are getting their grub on. All except for Agu. He's not a fully fledged NDF warrior yet.
I carry Rehabilitation all day.
So, no food for him. He's instead asked to stand and salute until they ask him to stop. Moments later, the training for the newbies begins. It all starts with their scanning stance and how they hold a gun. Agu wants to see his mother, but IC remarks that little by little they're winning the war. And once the war is over, then he's free to find his mom. Next training session, propaganda. IC tells the NFGs that the NRC forcibly is trying to take control of the region. This is all to boost their morale and point out who the real enemy is. IC trains him to be ruthless.
They have tried to spit on your future.
And end anyone who destroys the peace. After training, Agu watches a football game with the Commandant, and the game goes sideways because a fight breaks out. Soon the Commandant rallies his troops for a rousing speech in hopes that the NDF will be fueled by vengeance. Of course, the Commandant also regards the NDF as his family. Then all the FNGs are initiated via this weird ritual. The ritual has them still above a fire. Then they're forced to run while being beaten. Agu makes it through, but to those that don't make it, unlucky. Soon he's put in a funeral-like event and they hold them at gunpoint, only for them to purposely miss. In the Commandant's eyes, the spirits have blessed the FNGs. The initiation is over, and it's time for war. They're asked to move out, and anything that's left is torched so that any scavengers can't use it. The NDF treks the land. The trek is kind of long that the Commandant is sure to plan that route ahead. Soon they reach a bridge, and they all get into a position for an ambush. Before this, Preacher here passes a joint to Hope. Then he informs Agu about the plan of action. Here comes a convoy, and the NDF launches an RPG to that front car, stopping the ambush. Bullets come flying, and Preacher needs some ammo, but Agu's a little sloppy. Good thing that ambush is over. Time to loot some goodies. A survivor's found.
Agu, you are going to kill this man.
So Agu's tasked to end his life. This unlucky schmuck is begging the Commandant that he's just a bridge engineer, but he shuts him up. The weapon of choice? Gun's too quick, so machete it is. To make it more convincing, the Commandant gaslights Agu that this man is part of that army that ended his brother and father. Soon, the wrath gets to him, and our boy chops him. In fact, Strick is there to help him too, chopping him up like a Makama beef bowl. Agu earns his first AK, but retches soon after. He's never going to be the same again. The rain comes. Agu's spending quality time with Stricka, but Agu's a little dumbfounded about why Stricka's giving him silent treatment.
I'm asking a question, you are not talking.
After the rain passes, the NDF now has the wheels to ride on. They make a few stops, where the child soldiers are allowed to relax and play around, while the older ones seem to have found something. Well, dinner for tonight. Soon they celebrate in this large shed, where the Commandant shows a father-like bond with the rest of his troops by telling them stories of this place with many beautiful women.
The women are too beautiful here.
Right on cue, IC brings some villager survivors, and it seems that the NRC has taken their villages as well. They let these people stay. Then next time, it's time for more war. They scope out this village for enemies, and our boy almost gets shot. IC's reporting to the Commandant that they're fighting in this very village and they're all pinned down. Commandant then orders him to take the bridge. Then he proceeds to let Agu spot. Soon the Commandant brings mortar support. He rallies only the brave.
You want to take that bridge? Yes, sir!
And he's asking him to help take the bridge, with no retreat and no surrender under their orders. Agu and the other soldiers brave into the village with guns ablazing. Our boy begins to fire back, and with their combined might, the PLF begin to retreat. Once they earn their victory, it's time for a celebration dance, followed by a funeral prayer for the 11 men that gave their lives for this mission. Agu narrates his experience about those that have passed. Agu and Strika overhear the Commandant receiving orders from his superiors that they need to slowly crawl and take over more villages, eventually with them ending up in the capital city to liberate it once and for all.
Agu, you fought well today.
Once that transmission is over, the Commandant commends Agu on how he fought today, even saying that Agu would make a great leader someday. He also says that Agu might eventually meet his mom once they fight through the capital. The Commandant gives him a special beanie, and he inhales some weird substances, and then does unspeakable things to Agu. Afterwards, our boy's really left traumatized. Strika carries him away as he cries silently by the fire. The next day, Preacher comes over to Agu and gives him some weird brown powder, and he massively trips out.
Oh boy, what is wrong with you?
Voices echo in his head, while the Commandant gives one of his famous speeches again. He's asking his troopers to pray, then they move out. A UN convoy runs by him and takes pictures of the NDF. They all move slowly towards the bushes, and Agu's vision begins tripping out. They're ordered to massacre a bunch of people, but they look like civilians. The village gets ransacked, and then over time, Agu begins to grasp military life. He's used to shooting people down, and even gaining a certain amount of respect from his peers. Eventually, the NDF moves in to siege this building, and Agu's seen overturning every piece of furniture. He's become the polarized opposite of what he was before, because now he's a foul-mouthed, gun-toting soldier. That brown powder's still taking over, so he mistakes this woman as his mom. The woman says otherwise, and he thinks she's tricking him. So Hope is left to violate her while they beat her child. Agu's realizing what he was doing now, and he puts the woman out of her misery. Soon, he looks at the town and sees lives being ended everywhere. At the town hall, Agu, Strika, the Commandant, and the rest of the troops watch as the soldiers put grenades in the mouths of these unlucky souls. The Commandant then gets a message from his superiors, and he blows away the prisoners. It seems like they're going to move out towards this next objective. The Commandant commands his troops to doom all but one of the civilians so that they could go to the next town and warn them with a wave of fear. The Commandant then puts Agu and Strika on his squad, and the NDF convoy moves out. With their guns in the air, they get halted by the guards of the next town. Turns out the army residing here are allies, and the Commandant says that they're NDF. So they're friendlies. The convoy's allowed inside. They all drive to town hall, where the Commandant meets the deputy. They're led inside without their weapons. Then they encounter this foreign dude. Hours pass, and the Commandant finally cracks.
Please, will you follow me?
They're finally led into a room, and more hours pass. They all fall asleep. Then the deputy wakes them up. It's finally time to meet Dada Goodblood, the Supreme Commander. The rest walk to a lunch table, while IC, the Commandant, and Dada talk. Instead of a general's promotion, the Commandant will be promoted to Chief of Security, while 2IC will lead his battalion. IC thanks him, but the Commandant's asking to get out. He knows that it's a ruse to demote him.
It has now become a battle for public image.
Dada, however, says the world is beginning to notice the war, so the Commandant doesn't really fit their public image. With that settled, the Commandant's asking for one more night with his men, so he gets them assembled. At night, the commandant takes his men to his mother's place, where they're given hot beers. The soldiers soon overstay their welcome, and then some girls come in to entertain them all. Most of them leave with women in hand. And then Strick and Agu spend the night there. Agu begins to have eyes for one of the waitresses. Then suddenly, gunfire. They bring in this poor sucker who got shot, and it's IC. He's blaming the commandant for it, but he's shifting blame to the woman 2IC was with. She thinks it's an accident, but the commandant orders to fire on his own mama. Then the escort that was with IC. They take the remaining women and get out of there. The next morning, Agu's dealing with substance abuse and to also watch over 2IC's suffering body. He says it's all for nothing. The commandant then calls for Agu and he tells him that these times are dangerous times, alluding to an imposter among them. Agu then breaks the news that 2IC is no more. The following night, the rest of the commandant's battalion are mourning for 2IC's passing. They all pray. Then the commandant gaslights his army that the supreme commander is now their enemy. Their new objective? Plundering the rest of the villages for their own personal gain. Agu's feeling a little unsure about this loyalty.
We are leaving him.
And the rest of the NDF travel toward the jungles. Deep into the night, missiles start striking at him. Explosions left and right because Bay stepped in and started directing the movie out of nowhere. Lots of men are absolutely decimated, and Agu's still struggling to keep his emotions in check as he sees doom everywhere. Since their vehicles were destroyed in the attack, they continue on foot, and it feels like the NDF are directionless for the first time. Agu and Stricka live off the insects. Then some more trekking happens. With 2IC gone, Preacher is now pointed to his position, but soon some distant gunfire is heard and they all prepare for war. For some reason, Stricka doesn't want to stand up and it looks like he's been hit. Agu gives him a piggyback ride so that he can lift him out of the war zone that's approaching. Agu's getting tired, but he continues lifting Stricka through the dense jungle, cause no one else would. Soon after, it seems like Agu's beginning to hear his mother singing, and Stricka's not responding. He falls off. Agu checks on him.
Striker!
Looking like a no pulse, Stricka has bit the dust. Agu's in genuine disbelief. He's trying to wake him up, but his peers quickly accept Stricka's passing. They cover him with a leaf and move on, but Agu takes one good look at his brother and walks away with grief held in his heart. Another day of war passes, and constant gunfire can still be heard. Agu's seen losing his grip, while Preacher's guarding that area with a machine gun. He then orders Agu to get some more ammunition, so Agu has to walk down to the fortification and cross the flooded trenches. As he's walking around, the NDF look like they're running out of spirit or morale, and some men are even looking weak and sick. Agu's monologuing that he feels totally desolate about this war, and that he thinks his mother's singing is the only thing keeping him afloat. He eventually reaches the rest of the camp, where he goes to the commandant asking for ammo. Preacher then comes over and says he's quitting.
I'm going, sir. No bullets.
Because the lack of food, water, ammo, and resources are just driving him mad. It seems like Preacher's about to start a coup, and Agu gets defensive. The commandant says that they have nothing to go back to because of their war crimes. Based. Soon a Mexican standoff between Agu, Preacher, and the commandant arises.
You want surrender? Huh?
With the latter asking Agu to end him. The standoff ends peacefully with all the soldiers walking out, and eventually, Agu walks out too. Eventually, these quitters come across some official UN soldiers to surrender to. They're taken back to the UN escort where the kids are asked to climb aboard their vehicles, while the adults are left to be scanned. Agu then wakes up in a comfy-looking dormitory and kids are playing outside. His teacher comes over asking how he's settling in, but he's totally traumatized beyond belief. Agu can't seem to shake away that military life and even suffers a PTSD.
I am knowing the sound of people screaming.
Soon, the kids at the facility begin to revolt as Preacher accuses the staff of poisoning him. Preacher wants to go back to military life, so he and this kid leave. Agu then gets counseling and begins recalling his horrible wartime experiences, plus the fact that he just wants a family to love him like before. In the end, Agu finally tries having some pure, genuine, childlike fun on the beach alongside his young peers. And the coast is clear. Cause that's it for Beasts of No Nation. What'd you guys think about this childhood trauma movie? Let us know in those comments below using that hashtag #CinemaRecap. This was Beasts of No Nation by Participant Media, starring Abraham Attah, Kurt Igyawan, and Idris Elba. Until we raid that next town, see you later.